Well, on behalf of Dave and Diane, the rest of the family, I want to welcome you to this occasion, this celebration. We're here to honor Carolyn, as well as to honor the God that she lived to honor. And so that's our direction, that's our focus this morning. And we're going to just have to ask God to help us to do that adequately. So, Father, help us. Spirit of God, we honor you. Help us to honor your work in the life of our sister, Carolyn. Help us to get about our Father's business this morning, whatever way, shape, and form you want to minister to us. Touch us this morning. Give us a fresh connection with you for the new year, for life, for newness of life, all that's available to us, God. Bless this morning to be a part of that in Jesus' name. Amen. We're going to start this morning by allowing one of Carolyn's good friends and fellow Bible school students to do honor to her, and that's Mr. Timothy Murray.
It is an honor to be here, and I too welcome you all. Glad to be here to do some honor to Sister Carolyn. I have three memories of her. The very first time I ever saw her was at Clyde Daggett's chicken farm. Anybody remember Clyde Daggett? Wells, Maine? Yeah, that's where I first saw Carolyn. Carolyn was in fact running between the barn and the house, and she was running fast, and she was running with zeal, and there was no holding back, and I was very impressed. I was probably 10 years old, and that means that she was 10 years old. 1943 was a good year, right, Jim? Yes, and that was my first memory. Grace, speed, zeal. The second one was when she and I were in Bible school together. Carolyn was outstanding as a volleyball player. She was, next to my wife, probably the best. Actually, she might have been a little better, I don't know. But she was a very good volleyball player, and she impressed me that way too, as a fellow student. I became aware, though, that Carolyn did not wear her religion on her sleeve. She kept it to herself. She was very self-contained. She was not a blabbermouth, at least not in spiritual terms, and I don't know as any other terms either. But she had what she had, and it was real. That was a wonderful memory, too. I also noted that she was easy to get along with. Everybody liked Carolyn. She was a lot like a fellow classmate named James, otherwise known as Jim Maxwell. Everybody liked Jim, too. Jim could get along with anybody. And even me. Jim and I became good friends, and that's remarkable. And of course, she married another excellent classmate of ours, and everybody liked Bob, too. The final thing that I'll mention here is, as her pastor in the most recent years here, I grew to really honor and respect her. She was very capable. She was actually the, I think, youngest of all her siblings, and that's correct, isn't it? Yeah. And 5 of those siblings were brothers, if I have the story right here. Yeah. And so you had to have your act together to deal with 5 older brothers. And she had it. She had her act together all right. She was faithful and true. I wouldn't call her a theologian. I wouldn't accuse her of splitting hairs spiritually. What she knew, she knew. She had a mind of her own, and she retained it, and she stuck to it. And she was the sort that would wear, although I don't think she ever did use this bumper sticker, but you've heard of it. The Bible says it, I believe it, and that settles it. That was Carolyn. She didn't worry about the fine points. She knew what the Bible said, she was willing to live it, and she was happy with it. Also, I'll have to mention as I close up here, her sense of humor was remarkable. It was unique. She was accused, or asked, I should say, not accused, but asked one time in recent years how she'd slept well. And one morning, how did you sleep last night? And she replied with vast wisdom, with my eyes shut. That's the way she slept. And kind of makes sense when you stop and think about it. But I do honor Carolyn today, and I'm glad to be here with you all here to do her honor at the close of her life.
All the way my Savior leads me, what have I to ask beside? Can I doubt his tender mercy, who through life has been my guide? Heavenly peace, divinest comfort, here by faith in him to dwell. For I know whate'er befall me, Jesus doeth all things well. For I know whate'er befall me, Jesus doeth all things well. All the way my Savior leads me, cheers each winding path I tread, gives me grace for every trial, feeds me with the living bread. Though my weary steps may falter, and my soul athirst may be, gushing from the rock before me, lo, a spring of joy I see. Gushing from the rock before me, lo, a spring of joy I see. All the way my Savior leads me, oh, the fullness of his love. Perfect rest to me is promised in my Father's house above. When my spirit, clothed immortal, wings its flight to realms of day, this my song through endless ages, Jesus led me all the way. This my song through endless ages, Jesus led me all the way.
And thinking about this service, I asked myself the question, what does the word Carolyn mean? And I kind of had an idea because we think of Christmas carol. So it's probably got something to do with music. But I looked it up anyway, because nowadays I'm not as smart as I think I am. So I looked it up to see what it really means. And the first thing I found, quoting from the English baby book, I think, baby names. The meaning for the word Carolyn is song of happiness. And I thought, it fits. Song of happiness. She, as that song says, all the way my Savior leads me. Sometimes he leads us in ways that aren't particularly happy or a lot of fun. But when we know that it's him that's leading, it's okay. We can maintain a song of happiness. Another source stated that Carolyn is the feminine uh, derivative of the name Charles. And Charles means free man. So, Carolyn, free woman, or the free one. And I thought, yeah, yeah, that fits. Carolyn was a free woman. She wasn't a rebel by nature that I ever saw, but, she walked her own trail and courageously. And that's a good thing. We don't need to be sheepishly just showing up. We can walk as free ones. Spanish, the term caro, means expensive or valuable, of great value. And I thought, wow, her parents pegged her pretty well with that name because she is each of those three things. She wore that name well. I remember one time it made me mad. I was watching a funeral on TV, and when a head of state passes away, and there's all the pomp and the prominent, and this guy was a rascal. If I told you his name, you'd know. You might be able to figure it out too if you watched it. But it was like, you have got to be kidding me. Why is anybody celebrating the life of this rascal? And yet you have somebody that lives their life like Carolyn Randall, and you can fit them all in a room this size. What's up with that? Something about that doesn't seem right. But in this room, we honor different things. We have a different economy than the world does. Different things are valuable in this room than are out there. And so we see somebody like Carolyn, and we can recognize their life was of great value as a free one. A free one. Doesn't that just fit? I just love that. I don't know how spiritual it is, but it just seemed to fit. And she wore that name well. Well, we come to funerals. I remember talking with a guy on my squad. I was a police officer with the city of Tampa before I retired, and I had we always met as a squad and did roll call and all that stuff. And I think if I remember the situation right, a retired police officer had passed away. And so some of us were making plans to attend the funeral, and this guy said, I don't do funerals. He said, I don't do funerals. He said, I see enough death out here. I don't even want to think about it. And we get that. Who wants to think about, growing old and eventually stopping growing old, because there's only one alternative to getting older, and that's to die. And this officer wanted nothing to do with this funeral, and I understood, but I encouraged him to go because we need to think about this. We need to think because it all ends this way for all of us. And I think Solomon in the scriptures says it's better to go to the house of mourning than to the house of feasting. I don't know. The house of feasting sure does seem to be a lot more fun. But the house of mourning can be fun too, especially when your mourning is only temporary, as it is in this case. Funerals for people who you really don't know what their spiritual status was can be pretty tough when you're asked to do a funeral for somebody like that. But this isn't one of those. This is just a farewell. See you soon. I was mowing the yard the other day, and I thought about Carolyn, and I thought, what happened the minute she got to heaven? And it just hit me. I said, the first thing she did was she went up to Bob, and she slugged him right in the shoulder and said, that's for leaving early. And I could just picture Bob looking back at her going, he didn't ask. It's not like I had any options, but after they have that little exchange, then they go see all the cool stuff that God has prepared for us. So death is, it's a fearful curtain, and as we approach that, we need to consider that. What lies behind the curtain? What's next? Well, the thing that's beyond the curtain is the only being who existed at one point, God himself. He's beyond the curtain. And he's a holy God. One guy asked the question, you talk about salvation, what are we being saved from? And we know the Sunday school answer is we're saved from sin. And he said, but that's not really the case. What we're being saved from is from a holy God. And God had to do certain things to work out our salvation. I was thinking about the 90th Psalm, which those of you that know and remember from your Bible school days know that is the psalm written by Moses. It's not David or Asaph or some other guy that was contemporary there. This one, for some reason, was written by Moses and wound up getting plugged into the middle of the book of Psalms. But in that Psalm of Moses, he makes this request. He says, so teach us to number our days, that we may present to thee a heart of wisdom. And Carolyn did that. Again, Carolyn wasn't I attend a Baptist church in the South. And the only thing that matters in the Baptist church in the South is sharing your faith. You got to be flapping your gums about Jesus all the time, or you're just not going to make it. And it's tedious, really, because every sermon winds up going to that point. And share your faith with your neighbor. And it's like, oh, goodness, I see some people. Please don't share your faith. It's not working at home. Please don't export it. So I hope there aren't any other Southern Baptists in the room. Like I say, I still go there, so don't kill me. But the point of the story is, at the end of it, to present back to God a heart of wisdom. A heart of wisdom. It may be communicated with your lips. I mean, we know there are pastors and teachers and all that stuff, so somebody's got to do some talking every once in a while. But, for words of power, instead of just perpetuating church chatter. I've had enough of that. I think most of us in the room have had enough of that. But to have a heart of wisdom to present back to God. That's what Moses said it was about. Teach us to number our days. Why does it matter? I thought Jesus paid it all. And nothing matters because Jesus paid it all. Well, Jesus did pay it all. But there's a lot of things that matter. Jesus himself says something in Matthew chapter 12 that I think about often, because as a pastor, you have to speak. And he says this, I say to you that every idle word that men shall speak, they shall render account for it in the day of judgment. Every idle word. Really? So there's still an accounting to this? I thought Jesus paid it all and nothing really matters because Jesus paid it all. But phrases like that and other places where he says something like, except a man deny all that he hath, he cannot be my disciple. I thought Jesus paid it all. He did. Well, then why does anything else matter? Because in God's economy, somehow it does. It does. So, idle words. I'm in a Bible study with a group of men at one of the churches that I've kind of butted my way into. If a church is advertising something online about a men's group, you put it online, I'm going to show up. And I'm going to butt my way in, and hopefully you'll like me. If not, you can give me the left foot of fellowship somewhere down the road, I guess. But as for now, and they were talking about the book of James, and James, the 3rd chapter, verse 1 says, let not many of you be teachers. Let not many of you be teachers. And as we worked our way through that passage, it's like, what if somebody told you that the mark to meet is a 70, but if you want to be a pastor or a teacher, it's a 90? Still want to be a pastor or a teacher? I don't know. It's a little sobering. If it really means what it says, that the grading system is going to be a little different for those of us who accepted a call to speak on God's behalf. we're careful. The writer to the book of Hebrews perhaps takes it a little bit further when he says there is no creature hidden from his sight, but all things are open. Some versions use the word naked, laid bare before the eyes of him with whom we have to do. There's no pretense, there's no playing around, there's no dressing it up because it's laid naked and bare. I had this dream when I was a kid, and I had it a lot. I never told anybody about it until one of my friends said he had this dream, and I went, wow, I have that dream all the time. You wake up in third period and you're skivvies. How did this happen? And you wake up terrified. I mean, all we had back in our day were tighty-whities. So everybody in the room was in their tighty-whities, and it's like, oh my goodness. Now you guys have options, but that's all we had back in the day. And that can be disconcerting. I have to deal with a God before whom all things are laid bare and open, naked. So I can pretend and maybe pull it off with you people, if I'm really good at it. But he's not fooled by anything. And all things are naked and laid bare. And where that's scary on one hand, it's completely freeing on the other. I don't have to pretend to be anything. I can show up here, warts and all. I had a tooth break this week. That's great. You know, you're going up to Maine, see a lot of people you haven't seen in a long time. So Lisa says, you can't go up there with a broken tooth. So I called my dentist, and they said, we can see you on January the 10th. Guess what? You're going up there with a broken tooth. She said, well, you at least got to get your hair cut. So I called my barber. She's out. She's not back in town yet or something. And it's like, who really cares anyway? We're getting older, you know. We're not what we thought we were at one point. But all things are naked and laid bare before the eyes of him with whom we have to do. And this is kind of the somber part of a funeral, and it needs to be there. You go to a funeral that's all blah, 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 bells and whistles, and you leave knowing that something was missing. But in every audience group this size, there's somebody who needs to know this part. And Carolyn would want you to know this part too, because Carolyn wants to see us all again, and there's only one way that she can do that, and that is if we avail ourselves of what she availed herself of, what God provides to us. The 130th Psalm, I think I'm just going to read the whole thing. It's only eight verses. Out of the depths I have cried to thee, O Jehovah. Lord, hear my voice. Let your ears be attentive to the voice of my supplication. For, O Jehovah, if thou markest iniquities, who can stand? But there is forgiveness with thee, that thou mayest be revered. I wait for Jehovah, my soul waits, and in his word do I hope. My soul waits for the Lord more than the watchman for the morning. Indeed, more than the watchman for the morning. If you spent 20 years on midnight shift, you know what that phrase means. Goodness gracious. Will it ever be sunup? Some nights were like that. And he's longing with that kind of gaze. But Israel, hope in Jehovah. For with Jehovah there is loving kindness, and with him there is abundant redemption. He will redeem Israel from all her iniquities. But that verse 3, Lord, if you mark our transgressions, who will stand? You know what that is. Those of you who are teachers or have been under the thumb of teachers know what a red pen is for, right? You turn in a paper that you're really proud of, and it comes back. What was the point? Lord, if you mark my transgressions, who will stand? If you're going to, and the picture comes to me of at the end of my life, when I'm able to take the story of my life and present it to God. If this is what you're going to go over that with, I'll save you the trouble. Where's hell? Think of that story, the blue vase. I can't remember the other name of it, but you know what I'm. The go-getter. And Bill Peck, and we know he's got a bad arm, he's got a bad leg from his injuries in the war. But he applies for this job, and the guy says, "What if you can't do it, Bill? What if you can't make good on it? You say you can sell anything. What if you can't?" He said, "Then I'll quit to spare you the embarrassment of having to fire me." And if this is the end of the story, I'm out. But as I'm about to hand my life paper to the judge, off to the side, I have an advocate. And right as I'm about to turn that in, he looks at me and he goes, "Hey," he says, "you do understand there's only 2 grades. What do you mean? C pluses don't fly here?" He says there's only 2 grades. There's a 100 and there's an F. Do you want to turn that in? What option have I got? I'll trade with you. Here's my story. I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but I'm not the dumbest either. I'll take that deal, okay? And I don't even care about my story at that point. So what? I did some things well. I did some things that people thought I did well, but I did them for a bad motive. So God knows that it didn't pass. Now, I'm not saying everything we do is contaminated. I don't know how to sort all that out. But I know there's enough red marks in my story that I do not want to go on the basis of that. I had a communion service in Florida years ago when Mr. Phil Anderson was still alive. And I don't remember what I talked about, but in the communion service, he stood up and he said, "I do not want to stand before a righteous, holy God for 5 seconds on the basis of what I deserve." And I don't remember anything from my notes, but I'll never forget him saying that, because I looked at him and I just went, if he's got zero hope, what am I pretending? But that's not the end of the story. I don't have to go up there with my paper covered with red marks. I can trade, because he's already taken those red marks. He's already taken them. All of our transgressions have been laid upon him. Again, I'm not an idiot. I'll take that deal. Here, my whole life straight into the shredder. And I'll take that, and I'll present that to my Heavenly Father, and He'll say, 100%. Come on in. I don't think Carolyn would have thought she was the smartest person in the world. I did come to recognize that she and Bob could talk intelligently about just about everything. Anything that you wanted to talk about, it was like. And that was before Google made everybody an expert in 3 minutes. You know, it was like, man. Okay, I figured he probably reads the paper, but he really reads the paper. You know, and he could knock off sports stats and, you know, this senator from Kansas, and you're going, Kansas has senators? I don't know. But they were remarkable people. The season that we got to know Carolyn the best was when we first moved to Florida, and we started going down to Sebring to have services for Bob and Carolyn and their relatives down there. And at that age, our girls were small. And man, we knew what our girls could do to a room in a matter of minutes. And we'd go into Bob and Carolyn's house, and Carolyn, she just opened the doors, and our girls just started exploring, which was easy for Abby and Carly because they were little princesses, but Brooke was a viper in a diaper, and there was nothing that she couldn't break, you know, and it was like, goodness. And of course, at the end of everybody went home, and we'd try to put things away. But it was Carolyn that was saying, if it survived Diane and Dave, it's fine. They can't break it either. So, but she was just so gracious. And I look back on it now, and I'm thinking, how did she sit through Sunday services that I presented? What am I doing? You know, she said more by not saying a word than I said in 60 minutes of whatever it was I was trying to drum up. But somebody has to drum it up, I guess. So God does help us, I know that. But so I would just encourage those of you that maybe haven't done a lot of thinking about it or don't like to think about it, that this doesn't have to be the end of our story. I can set that off to the side, and yeah, okay, if I still have to answer for some things in heaven, I don't know how that works. But okay, I can swallow my pride and say, yes, I wish I had done better on that. Somebody said one time about the disciples, the day that Jesus washed their feet, that if they had known that the Son of God was going to be washing their feet that night, they'd have been more careful where they walked that day. So we're serious about it. We want to walk carefully. We don't want to grieve the Spirit of God. We don't want to flub up. We want to live lives that He's pleased with. But beyond that, I don't just want to please Him. I want to satisfy Him. He shall see the travail of His soul, and He shall be satisfied. And so I believe that was Carolyn's goal. I believe that's why she was careful, because she wanted to find Him pleased and satisfied by what she had to say. I'm going to close my remarks with the lyrics to a song. I'd never heard the song. I stumbled across the lyrics in something I was reading, so it may be a popular song. I don't know. It simply says, "Go, silent friend. Your life has found its ending. To dust returns your weary mortal frame. God, who before birth called you into being, now calls you hence." His accent still the same. That loving accent is still the same, even when He calls us home. Go, silent friend, your life in Christ is buried. For you, He lived and died and rose again. Close by His side, your promised place is waiting, where fully known you shall with God remain. So go, silent friend. Forgive us where we grieved you. Safe now in heaven, kindly say our names. Your life has touched us. That is why we mourn you. Our lives without you cannot be the same. But go, silent friend. We do not grudge you glory. Sing, sing with joy. Deep praises to your Lord. You who believed that Christ would come back for you, now celebrate that Jesus keeps His word. Pretty good, huh? I like that. Her son Dave is going to come over and take it from here. So, oh, Patrick's going to go first. Your son will come up first. Okay, got it.
The song actually.
I'm glad to see so many people here to honor my mother, and I have a few people to thank. And the very first one would be my mother for being such a wonderful mother to Diane and I, and grandmother and great grandmother to all the kids. And so I'm glad to be able to be here and honor her memory as well. And there's a couple of people that really, we were able to keep my mom at home right till the very end. And there's a couple of people that made that possible. And one was Kristen Holland, who she was working remotely, and she had offered to Diane to come and 3 days a week and stay with my mom, so that I'd still be able to work and everything. And then my daughter Casey, she also helped on days that Kristen wasn't available to do that. So it was just a huge thanks to both of them, because it made it possible for her to live out her life in her house. She didn't have to be shut away somewhere, and it was wonderful to be able to do that for her. And then I would like to thank everyone that is here that has come to honor her memory. I really appreciate it, and thank you for doing that. And the ones that can't be here, I'm glad that we were able to put it on Facebook for people to be able to see as well. So it's a real honor to share her memory with everybody. And as things were getting near the end for her, we appreciate all the thoughts and prayers and memories, things that were shared on the people that were on Facebook. That it was great to just have that encouragement. It made a huge difference for us. And Rhonda had gone through, I think when she first went into hospice, we had there was a bunch of people that had just written things about her, and Rhonda had gone through and read all of those to her. So it was really great to be able to share all those different things from all the, I don't remember how many comments there were, but there was a lot that she read, so it was great. My mom, I don't know, it was, so we cared for her for about a year and a half. It was about a year and a half ago. She wasn't able to care for herself, so Diana and I began, Diana lived with her quite a bit anyway and helped her out in different things, but somebody had to be with her pretty much full time. And but her, that spirit that she had, that Dan talked about, just feisty and sense of humor and all, that was never broken. I mean, right up to the very end. That Tim referred to, when I was the one that asked her how she had slept, and that was like 2 days. The last 5.5 days she was non-responsive, but so it was about 2 days before she became non-responsive. I came in and I asked her how she slept, and she says, with my eyes closed. She just kind of grinned and laughed, and it just, but and it was, because physically she wasn't able to get around anymore, and had to have help with everything, and then she had dementia stuff going on too, so she'd get confused about things. But it just was another thing that she liked to do, because we'd have to just have her sit in her chair most of the time, because she just she wasn't very mobile or anything. And but she liked to watch I Love Lucy, and I would come home sometimes, and I'd come in and she would say, "This is so hilarious," and sometimes I would be in the house and I'd be doing something. It wasn't necessarily always that, but sometimes she'd just be watching something. I just hear her laugh, and she just never lost that ability. And I think about that now, just how, because it not easy to get to the point where she was at in her life, and that probably would have broken a lot of people's spirits, but. I don't know. When I would take her to like doctor's visits and stuff like that, she would always. Well, she had 5 older brothers, as Dan had mentioned, I think, and but there was 3 that were closest to her in age, and she would always tell whoever we were talking to that made her tough, because she had those three brothers that didn't always make her life the easiest. And so I think it's a combination of that and probably being a Mainer. Mainers are well known as being very stubborn and resolute and kind of tough things out. And then I think just people in her generation too are kind of, they just are very want to be self-sufficient and don't want to bother anybody. And so I think probably it's a combination of all of those that just kept that, didn't let her spirit get broken. But it was amazing to watch that and see that. I mean, I didn't really think about it at the time, but to look back on it now and just think about, just how amazing she was. And there's a partial verse in the program of a song that was written by a friend of mine that I actually went to high school with. It's called "I Believe in Angels," and the second verse is what's in the program, and that was, I had actually talked to my friend after my mom passed away, and he said he had written that about when his grandmother had passed away, and I had a playlist on YouTube of about 90. She loved to listen to old hymns and stuff like that and gospel songs, and I had a playlist of about 90 songs. In the morning that she passed away, it was playing right at that particular time, talking about angels taking you home. It was just as God was saying, "I've got her now," and that was really special because Rhonda was there with me as well, and she kind of looked at me and says, "What's that playing right now?" And it was, and like I said, it was talking about the angels taking her home, and Max and Hannah, her two youngest great grandchildren, had just come in just before she passed away. She was my daughter Casey had to go pick up one of the other kids, and so Max and Hannah came running down, and my mom loved Max, and it was great because Casey lived just behind my mom, so she would get to see them quite often, and so she really loved them. And but they were there for probably maybe no more than 2 minutes when she passed away. It was almost as if she heard them like one last time and says, "Okay, I've heard them again, and I'm, it's time to go home now." And I like to think of the when you read about like somebody having a near-death experience, they see the room for I don't know how long, but before they move to the eternal home. And so I love the thought of Max and Hannah playing around my mom's bed, and that's what she saw just before she went home. And it's just such a happy memory, and just knowing that how much she loved seeing them anyway. So, but my mom, she always loved to have fun and have a good time. She used to tell stories about some of the things when she was younger. One thing was they used to play this game called Queen Dido's Dead, and I'd never heard of it. And but you start out with, I guess you're pounding like one fist and you're saying Queen Dido's dead, what she die of, and they're doing this, and you go through until like all your whole body's shaking around doing that. And she used to tell that story, and I think my grandfather didn't get home till kind of later from work, but they'd be doing that sometimes at the dinner table. And he said one time at least when he pulled in, he says, if somebody came in here, they would think I lived in a crazy house. And then another thing that she used to tell about when her family used to have a lot of water fights when she was a kid. And it would start out at the dining room table after the meal. Somebody'd have a little bit of water left in the glass, and they would toss that at somebody, and then a little bit more. And then once it got to the either full-size glass or bucket size or whatever, my grandma would say, "All right, outside with it." But they always loved to have a good water fight. And then another thing that she talked about a lot was she was never loved being in the kitchen and cooking and stuff like that. She loved to be outside with my grandfather, and he always had animals and things that he cared for, and raised cows and chickens and maybe pigs. I don't remember what all, but she always loved to be out there with him, and that was just something she always had great memories of spending a lot of time with him doing that. And then I don't know when she first took up basketball, but I know at least in middle school, and that was when they were living down in Wells at the Daggett Chicken Farm. And she played in middle, because she had lived in Brunswick since she was about 5 until she was, I think, around 8 or 10, something like that. And then they moved to Wells for 2 or 3 years. And so she played basketball down there. And when she was in 8th grade, because they moved back here, I believe, partway through her 8th grade. And but when she was down there, when she was in 8th grade playing basketball, sometimes the varsity coach would come get her to play on the varsity team. So she was a really great athlete. I mean, she would never tell you that herself, but she was not. It's not the type of person she was. But I mean, she was very, very good athlete. And but when she got back to Brunswick and got into high school, they didn't have a basketball program. So she and some of her friends took the initiative to get one of the boys basketball coaches to coach a team for them, and started the girls basketball program at the Brunswick High School. And I don't know if she still holds the record, but I know for many years she actually held the scoring record for basketball. So that was one of her great loves. And as has been mentioned too, volleyball. She did love playing that too. And when I think about her being tough, I recently Joan Anderson told me about she tore her Achilles. And I remember when I was quite small, I remember her doing that. But Joan told me that after she did that, she finished the game hobbling around on one foot. She said she didn't move a whole lot after that, but she stood up and finished a volleyball game with a torn Achilles. And I have watched football games where you get, a guy gets injured on the field, they get a cart out there and haul him off, and then later on they'll say, oh yeah, he had an Achilles injury, and he's like writhing around on the ground in pain, and they get this cart to carry him away, and here she is, playing volleyball on essentially one foot in, I don't know, and it must have been quite a bit of pain too. So it was, it just kind of amazes me. And then after she graduated from high school, she went on to Bible school down in Dublin, New Hampshire, and that's where she and my dad had met. And this summer, Kathy Fulton and Bev Jones were visiting, and Bev told this story of because my dad was from Florida, and he would. Sometimes he'd leave, I think, to either go back to visit or go. Sometimes he'd help my grandfather on a project that if he needed help or something. But anyway, my dad was leaving the Bible school for a period of time, and Pauline Marsteller was the house mother at the Bible school, and he went to her before he left, and he says, I don't think there's anybody here for me, talking about marriage, and so he left, and I don't know how long he was gone for. Comes back and goes back to Pauline. He says, I really missed Carolyn when I was gone. And Bev said there was a lot of disappointed girls because I guess there was a number of them that were interested in my dad. So, but that was great to hear. And then, as has been mentioned too, that she did things her way. She was not, she didn't want to just conform to everything, and that carried into when her and my dad got married. They would have been 60 years ago on the 26th of this month that they were married right here on this platform. But she used to say, because at the time it was typical to have the ceremony be like over an hour long. So I believe it was Mr. Holland was the pastor here. Okay, and they went to him and said, you either keep the ceremony short or we're going to get married someplace else. Uh, so we kept it short and they got married here. And the other thing was, I guess they would apparently have the couple that was getting married sit on the platform and face the audience. And my mom and dad they weren't comfortable with that, and they said, "Yeah, we're not going to do that either." So I guess they stood and faced Mr. Holland as he performed the ceremony. So yeah, she, like I said, as has been mentioned, she wasn't rebellious, but she certainly was not going to have her mind easily changed on stuff, and then, as I said, as a mom, she was terrific. I mean, she always made so much time for Diana and I growing up. She would, I played, baseball and soccer and basketball, did cross country. I did, a lot of different sports over the years, and she was always there for that, always willing to drive me, always willing. I mean, she just put the effort in. I mean, it would have been easy to say, well, no, we're not going to do this time because, I just don't feel like driving you there all the time. But never was that ever her posture. I mean, it was always, if you want to do that, I'll make sure you get there and you can participate. And it just is, it was just great that she did that. I mean, like Diane and I, we for a while down in Florida, there was a weekly newspaper we used to sell, and she would drive us, spend hours on Wednesdays. It used to come out, and she'd drive us all around to deliver them and sell them and stuff like that. And never, there was never a second thought of doing stuff like that. But it also, I think she was also helping to instill, good work ethic. There we go. But she didn't just want to do all the fun things or whatever. She put the effort into. She had to discipline Diane some. She never really had to discipline me, but but things like that. She put the effort into. Not just do the fun things in parenting. She really brought us up well, and again, to that I'm so thankful. And she, another thing, when we were here in Maine, they had a camp on Allen Pond, and we spent many hours up there too. And she would take us up there with cousins and friends and stuff, and it just like that. It just was just so much time that she invested in us, and never any complaints about it. And another thing she liked was going fast. I can remember I was, maybe 10 years old or so, and my cousin Wayne Hobart he was a little bit older, and he had a Ford Mustang, which was very fast. And I remember Diane and I and Lynn and Greg piling into that, and there's a stretch of road not far from where she lives on 125 that we went down, got onto 125, and then she opened that thing up, and we went up over 100 miles an hour, which we, as a 10-year-old or whatever it was, I was like, wow. A little surprised, but yeah, she always liked speed, so it was, that was fun. And I don't know if all of you saw it, but there was a picture of her and my dad and Olivia and I on a roller coaster at Busch Gardens, and and that was when it was probably a little over 10 years ago now, and so she was about close to 70 years old, and she couldn't do it as much as far doing like riding roller coasters and stuff like that, but she just loved that stuff. And then there was another one in the slideshow of her when we were at camp probably 3 years ago, that we helped her into a tube because she wanted to go tubing out on the lake at 77 years old, something like that. She loved to have fun, and Yeah, and as had been mentioned too, she was certainly held true to her faith. She was I'd seen in her Bible written down. She said there's a stream down beyond the Shiloh Cemetery, which she said in 1950 she was baptized there, and she lived her whole life just holding true to that faith. And again, I honor her for that too. Just just a really, I mean, it's a common phrase, a life well lived, but it certainly applies to her, and I'm so glad to have been a part of it. And now my son Patrick is going to share some memories.
I'm glad to be here this morning. I guess it's noon now, but sharing a little bit about my grandmother Carolyn. She was Grammy to me, and I'm glad to be here to honor her as her favorite grandson. We came up from Massachusetts last night, and my Aunt Diane offered to let us stay at Grammy's house, which we were glad to do. So we stayed there last night, did some visiting, and then put the kids to bed and turned in ourselves. And last night I had a dream. In this dream, we were there at the same house. We were sleeping, and in this dream, I woke up early in the morning and went in to check on the kids, who we had put in different rooms on the floor in their sleeping bags. So I opened a door, and there's Grace sleeping on the floor, and I was surprised to see in the bed in that room, Grammy lying there, her body in the house. And don't worry, her body's not in the house. This was just a dream. But then, so Grace is sleeping on the floor in the dream, and then to my horror, Grace, still half asleep, apparently tired of sleeping on the hard floor, gets up, jumps in the bed where Grammy's body is lying, rolls right over her, and then falls back asleep in the bed. And then, even more surprising, Grammy says, "Ow!" starts to wake up. She wasn't dead after all. And so I call Melissa and the kids in. Where she wakes up. She's lucid and she's talking. There she is, her old self, telling jokes. We were visiting for a while. It was great. And all of a sudden, I said, "Oh no, we're late for the funeral." Well, never mind. So it was a strange but good dream, and a good reminder that she is still alive. It was nice to remember she is alive. She is herself fully. Nothing's been lost. There's a children's book by Robert Lawson about his ancestors. It's an old book about his ancestors coming to America and making their way in this country and overcoming various challenges. And there's a line in that book where describing his grandparents and his ancestors, Robert Lawson says, "None of them were great or famous, but they were strong and good." And when I read that, I thought, that's really all my grandparents, but that's Grammy for sure. She was not great or famous, but she was strong and good. She was literally strong. I mean, we've heard some stories. There was a picture in the slideshow. I think she could beat me arm wrestling until I was 12 or 13. She was proud of that. She was also very tough, and she was, though she was never a braggart, she would remind people that she was tough, especially toward the end as her body was frail. She would insist, "No, I can do it. I'm tough," and she would remind us too that she had to be tough with all those brothers, all those older brothers. So even toward the end, when she was quite frail and her memory was fading, she would say that, "I'm tough." And she weathered a lot of indignity that comes with old age without complaining. She kept a cheerful spirit to the end. That's not to say that she would not let you know occasionally if you were doing something she didn't approve of. And with dementia, sometimes that may have been something that she imagined. Casey bore the brunt of that, my sister Casey, and I won't repeat some of the accusations that were leveled against her, but you can ask her. They were pretty funny sometimes. But Casey also kept a sense of humor about it. And I do want to pause here and just acknowledge the care that was given to Grammy. My dad has talked about it and thanked the many who made that possible for her to stay in her home to the end. But I especially want to honor Casey and my dad, who really just provided an extraordinary level of care for her to stay in her home, and really for over a year as she became really frail. And a lot of other people helped make that possible too, and we appreciate that. But just the level of care that they provided with endless patience, really remarkable. So I want to honor them for that. And I know a lot of people don't have the option to drop whatever they're doing and provide that kind of around-the-clock care, but they did it long after it would have been completely reasonable to pursue other arrangements. And I think that was really, really special and great for her to be able to be with family to the end. I won't speak much longer, but I will just share a few other things I'll miss about Grammy. And clearly I should have coordinated with my dad and other people who are speaking, because you'll hear some familiar themes here. But one thing I'll miss about her is the way she would say "get" if you were getting into something, or as a kid especially, get, often accompanied by a SWAT, get, G-I-T. I can't really say it right, but you've probably heard it. Things that are fast, right? She loved going fast. My dad talked about that and shared some good examples. Shortly before she passed, my mom shared with me that she was with Max, her great-grandson, my nephew, who's 3 years old, and she was explaining to Max that when Grammy goes to heaven, she's going to be in this new body, she's going to be free of pain, she'll be able to run and jump and do all these things, and Max pipes up, "And drive her car." And I imagine she is somehow. I don't know what they're like up there, but of course, to Max, if you come from Max's family, if you can't drive, you might as well depart this earth, right? There's no reason to live anymore. But I hope they have some speed limits up there, because she had a lead foot, that's for sure. I'll also miss her stories, and some of those have been shared. She and my grandfather both were storytellers. They marked the passage of time through stories and kept the memory of people who are no longer with us alive through stories, and loved to repeat the same stories. Even before she had memory issues, she loved to repeat stories. So there were many that I heard many times. But now that she's not here to retell them, it's like, I wish I'd written that down, or struggle to recall the details. Fortunately, all of you have heard these stories too. So there's I'm sure through our collective memory, these things will be preserved. Not to be morbid, but many of you in this room will see her before I do. Lord willing. And so when you do, I hope that you'll tell her that we miss her, and we look forward to being with her again and seeing her again. Thank you.
Okay, well, if she wanted a short wedding, she wouldn't want this to go on forever. But we do want to take the opportunity. I know a lot of you knew her very well, went through seasons of life together. So we're going to make the portable microphone. It obviously is the portable mic. So we'll make that available to some. Again, if you go too long, she'll look at you and go, "Get!" But make it available to you.
Well, as others have mentioned, Grammy had a wonderful sense of humor, and I appreciate how she welcomed me wholeheartedly into the family. And I was initiated in several ways, but largely through humor. And the one picture up there that Grammy loved to tell this story again and again was how I was introduced to the native Florida oranges. And to the great delight of Grammy and Grandpa, they set it up perfectly. Here I was with my tiny baby I was introducing to the family, and they come with this orange, and it was this lovely offering. I should have suspected when Patrick eagerly grabbed a camera and to take a picture of people that something was up. So he's filming and taking a picture, and I bite into this orange, and it was incredibly sour, and everyone laughed. And then we heard about it for years afterwards. But it was that kind of welcome that she gave to everyone. Like, teasing was a sign of great respect and love, and I appreciated that about her, that she was a jokester and liked a good ribbing to her and from her. And I love that culture that she created in her family, and the welcome she gave to me and to many. She welcomed into her home.
We love Bob and Carolyn, served as her pastor for about 10 years in Florida. And one of the things that hasn't been mentioned that I want to mention was her and Bob's generosity. They were generous people. They offered their camp for us to vacation in for a number of summers, and they would often, when we were there, give a handshake with some money. They were generous, they loved other people, and they cared for us, and I honor her memory.
So I'm Mary Aldrich, for those of you who don't know who I am, and for those of you who do, it's great to see all of you. Neil said kind of what I was going to share. I really appreciated her generosity to our family when my children were very young, and so I think at one point we had 5 children, with the oldest one at 6 years old, and looking for places to get away. She and Bob generously let us use the camp on the lake, and Diane came and helped. We had a grand time together, but there was very much a yes response, with great courage, and I frequently thought about all the ways that she had to sort of pick up all the little details after we were gone, whether it was, washing the sheets or things like that. She was so kind. And then they also treated our family down in Florida a couple of times when, having so many little people in your house was very intimidating for any sane person. And she and Bob were very kind to help us have a respite for our children, and I'm so grateful for their incredible generosity in our family. And one other thing that I remember is getting to know her. I remember sitting around talking in Florida, and somebody mentioned she wouldn't say what a great athlete she was, but I do remember a specific conversation that she wanted to make it very clear with me what a great volleyball player she was and a basketball player. So we had some great conversations about her success and her wins that way that I remember fondly. And the remembrance that there's probably in the context of there was life before children kind of idea, that idea, and just being able to enjoy that. So I love her. I love the family, and it's such an honor to be here to celebrate her life.
There will be more opportunity to share these little tidbits and stories. In the fellowship hall, there are food, snacks provided. So we're going to just, for the prayer for the food. Oh, yeah, we'll do that if I don't forget. We've got a free one in our midst. I hope you all have enjoyed it. A little Carolyn, and she's not going to be daunted. Hallelujah. So, Father, thank you for the opportunity to come and to honor a woman worthy of honor. And we've done that to the best of our ability. Bless the rest of this day, God. Pour your life and your strength into Dave and Diane as they meander their way through the weeks and the months to come. Bless them, God. Be the God of all comfort to them and to the rest of the family too, God. Manifest your good shepherd care in every way that it's needed. Now care for the rest of the day today, God. Bless the food. We know there's illness making its way around us, so God, bless the food today so that it takes care of that, so that we don't take something back to our families and friends at home. Care for us for the rest of the day, God. Bless Carolyn's memory. Help us to maintain her set of soul and her purpose that she was faithful to. In Jesus' name, amen. So I think it's quicker if we go out the back, I think. So